I'd love to welcome you, Emerson. And I'll say that it was a pleasure to meet you at Product World, where we were both speaking. I will say that your talk was the highlight of the conference for me. I thought it was amazing. That's why I had to approach you afterward. I want to tell the product managers and designers here that Emerson is going to be sharing a world of knowledge with you that will be very practical. And he's going to be going through an overview of many of the best tools that he's found that can help you. And the information on all this will be easily accessible because the slides with hyperlinks to all these tools will be made available to you in the description of the talk.
Yeah, well, first, thanks for having me. I would just want to say, really appreciate the kind
Go ahead
words.
and share some things about yourself.
No, yeah, I mean, I think you summed it up right. I love helping individuals, teams, et cetera, go from idea to impact as fast as possible. And AI has just made such an impact in our ability to make those things happen. So excited to share, give back, and learn from everyone else on the call, since there's a lot of things happening in this space fast, right?
There is. That's why I was so excited that you put together such a great talk. Now, this is a mind map that I made about the different activities or tasks that a product manager does. And I have also another one for designers here. And this color coding scheme is that red means that that's something that Gen AI has highly impacted. And so that means that for an individual here, you can become much more productive in those tasks if you leverage AI. Similarly, you could say that AI is displacing human effort there to a large degree. And then where it is yellow, it is where Gen AI, I think, has had moderate impact. So it definitely can improve your performance and productivity in those tasks. Or you could say it moderately displaces the work in that area for that person. But one of the key things I want to show here is that we've done these mind maps for every position on the product team, and the bottom line is that AI is a great enabler for amplifying human talent, but it's really bad at totally replacing any of these jobs. So that what do you think about that?
100%. I think just like you said, it enables everyone to do more work faster, and I think that opens up new possibilities for new things we haven't even fully imagined. I would say in this work, but it has not yet, and we're probably a long way away, if ever, from completely replacing us humans. I think there'll just be new ways of us engaging with these things, like you have here, right? I think this idea of collaboration, that those soft skills, figuring out how you interact with people, and then maybe how you orchestrate AI. Maybe that will be something that we all end up doing more. But I don't think it's going to fully replace us by any means. We're just going to have a lot more impact available to us.
Yeah, so we see eye to eye on that. Now, I'm curious if you take a look at my assertions here of the yellow things being moderately displaced by AI, and the green not being really significantly displaced by AI. Would you change anything here?
I think right now it looks pretty good. I think over time that might, if we're all kind of learning as we go, and the models are getting smarter, that might change. I think the customer support collaboration is one. I think I've seen some cool things that people are doing where they're getting information through, like the call logs that are happening, or the chat, the chatbot messages, the support messages, and then using those to actually go directly into their backlog, be it on Linear or Jira, and using the models to kind of parse out what were the biggest challenges that were happening in the last week, for example, or the last couple week or month, and then can that impact ideas, or can that impact things? So I think that's a new area that I don't even think most product people have even had the ability to. Maybe once in a while they have the ability to go through all the calls, the customer support logs, and all the chat. But before, it was either kind of siphoned off or sectioned off to another part of the team that they wouldn't have access to, or it would just be so much volume you couldn't possibly get that on a recurring basis. So that might be an area that maybe in that particular use case starts to turn a little bit, yellow. But I guess, but I think but it's a new possibility that hasn't even been, dreamed of previously.
Yeah, I actually agree with you. I think I'll turn that yellow. I've seen a number of startups actually in recent months showing demos on it, and yeah, I think that Gen AI is going to be really good at that,
Yeah, that's a
especially
great
when
use
it's
case. But I
trained.
mean, look, just like you said, that's only happened the last couple of months. If we were sitting here a year ago or 6 months ago, I mean, that would probably be green. Yeah, hard green.
Yeah, I hope we get to do an update of this talk several
Yeah,
months from now.
change
Okay.
completely.
All right, so you're a designer, and I'm very passionate about design too. What do you think about the assertions here? Would you change anything?
I think it's good. I think the conducting user interviews is one I'm watching very closely because that's starting to change. There's a really cool company that I didn't even list called Outset that is doing kind of a virtual app. So it's actually interviewing real people, doing real usability tests or real user interviews. But instead of you as a researcher conducting that, it's an avatar.
Hmm.
Now, I don't think that that's fully ready for prime time in most cases because I think good researchers, good designers are going to be able to ask a lot of edge quick cases, go a lot deeper that these
Yeah.
are not quite trained for. But I think it's starting, that's starting to kind of peak up in the corner as an interesting element. Certainly for actually doing the like helping consolidate the research, I think it helps enable people. I was at a meetup last week in New York, and people were talking about just you can do a lot more as a researcher now than you could have before. You could, maybe before you would have had to take a couple weeks to synthesize interviews. Now you could do that in maybe a week. So you can turn the research cycles a lot faster, which
Hmm.
enables more research. The interface prototyping is an interesting one in red because I think it's kind of twofold, right? I think it's exactly what I think you said at the beginning. It's changing the way that we think about how you might prototype. You can get to a coded prototype a lot faster. You can test a lot of different possibilities for interfaces with some of these tools potentially faster. And I think it's moving quickly with like Figma's AI is starting to roll out to more teams. So I think this is definitely an interesting area that's going to enable new possibilities. I think we're still in I would say it's kind of yellowish, orangish right now as teams are still figuring out how do they take the most advantage of it. But I think there's a real possibility there to have a very big impact, like you have marked here.
Yeah. All right. Excellent. Um, Now let's get into the meat of the AI tools that you recommend that can optimize PM and designer workflows. So let's start with this ideation.
Yeah, so just as Andrew kind of we have all the stages or a lot of the stages of the product development process here. So what I've done is kind of highlight a few different areas where I think will have the biggest impact. This is not to say it has all, these are all the impact areas, but these are a couple good ones I would say. So we built a homegrown tool called Exponent.io that's kind of a fun creative thought partner to come up with new ideas, doing kind of like the equivalent of Crazy Eights, but having the AI do that for you, do root cause analysis and build out things. Of course, ChatGPT, I think Claude, Grok now, DeepSeek all has possibilities for that too. I think the key with the creative thought partner, which I really like, is using it just as that kind of going back and forth with the AI, as opposed to like putting something in and thinking, hey, that's it, that's all, that's going to be the end all be all around this thing. It's using it more as a play by play and kind of going back. And tied to that is, I think, just like great way to visualize things. With some of these image visualization tools, lots more coming on the market every day. Around just, you maybe have a storyboard, you have an idea, you want to bring that to life a little bit more than just a heavy text document. Putting that in there is interesting. So a lot of that kind of grunt work, I think, that happens in that earlier stage.
I have had lots of hands-on with using ChatGPT and some things like that, like Gemini. For me, it's just been a game changer. AI has just amplified not only me and everything I do, but really every position on my staff. And I've really pushed aggressive adoption of Gen AI really 3 months after. ChatGPT 3.5 came out, and I tried it, and it just blew my mind. And I came in, and I had a meeting with my staff the next day and being like, everyone has to use Gen AI all day, every day. It's just like there's going to be a whole new level of human productivity that is available. And yeah, we all feel like superheroes.
Yeah, I think that's a great point too, and you probably imagine like what the difference between 3.5 and now, with 4.0 and 4.5 and Grok 3 and all the, Gemini 2, all these different models, Claude 3.7. It's like it's such a big leap between in the last 1 or 2 years, and that
Yeah.
continues to happen. And I think the thing you said too about this is the key, I think, for all product people, no matter what level. Let's just play around with it. That would be the most important thing I would emphasize. If you get what I want, one thing on this call today is like just play around with these tools and experiment, use it in different ways, because what way works best for you is going to be something that it's going to be very unique to you, I would say. So you can't, I think there's no playbook of, I mean, I built a playbook, but it's really more of like an
There's
exploratory
one playbook.
playbook of like, just test these tools, see what works best for you, have fun with it, see how it might change your workflows.
Mhm.
Because if you're not playing with it, or if you try it, I see so many people, they try it once, it was kind of mediocre, and then
Yes.
they kind of give up on it. And I
Yes.
think that's going to put you in a really tough position in the next year or two if you do have that mindset.
Absolutely. I actually have talked to a number of people where I encouraged them to use Gen AI all day, every day, and they said, "No, I tried it and it sucks." And then I would walk them through, "Okay, what do you do professionally? All right, explain a little bit to me. All right." And then I would do a prompt, and then they would be like, "Oh my gosh, that's amazing. Yeah, what would you ask from here? I would want to know this." And I'd do another prompt, and just to show them that the difference between you and me is I know how to do prompt engineering, and that's just huge. I think that if you have had poor results with Gen AI, I'll bet you that your prompts are less than 10 words.
Yep.
And people that are really skilled at this, their prompts will, I don't know, my prompts generally will be like 18, 25 words.
Yep.
And then you can get even further if you give it step by step. Do this first, and then do this, and then do this. And so Gen AI, there's some tricks of the trade that you have to learn in order to get most out of it. What is your experience?
Yeah, no, 100%. I think you nailed it. And that's why you just got to play around with it, try out for different use cases within just like you said, think about what do you do every day, and then try out different use cases within it. And I would say, especially focus on the areas that are not fun. Where are the areas that you hate doing the most? And then also play around with the areas you love doing the most, because maybe it will unlock like new possibilities of making that even more fun. So I think playing around with the edges are also a good way to explore it.
Awesome. There are other things on this slide that you'd like to draw attention to.
Yeah, I'll just quickly call out. I think a couple other big areas are when we think about product and product ops, right? I think one challenge with product ops is how do you find the best examples within the organization, and so there's a lot of opportunity there for using tooling, and this is evolving quickly in terms of what are the tooling available for this, but Notion does a pretty good job with their AI. Guru is very focused on the Q&A piece. I think for all of us product people, the scheduling, you have to, against whether you're working with client teams or internal teams, like finding those calendars and whatnot. And so obviously a pretty good use case for AI to just, offload that. Hey, I want an hour block in this area, and let the AI go out and get the calendar invites set up.
Awesome.
Yeah. Let's,
Okay. Let's talk about market research. Your top pick there is Zeta.io.
Yeah, and that was kind of tied to what we were talking about earlier, right? It's like, how do you go everywhere from hearing about the customer feedback and then follow that feedback through the life cycle all the way to deployment, the release notes, and even seeing the impact of it. So I think that's a really cool tool to kind of go through that end-to-end cycle in a through a tool. And I think one other big area is just getting up to speed on topics quickly. So in market research, a lot of it is identifying like whether you're like a new industry and a new market, whatever you might have. And I think when you think about I know Andrew and I are both in the world of working with clients and whatnot. And so oftentimes we're tossed into a new industry, right? That we don't know a lot about. And whether you're just using ChatGPT to put in some information, now ChatGPT, Gemini, and Perplexity have a tool called Deep Research, which spends a lot more time. So maybe as opposed to a 30 seconds or a minute getting an answer back when you put something in, it might spend 5, 15, 30 minutes, 45 minutes looking at dozens of sources to give you an answer back.
Mhm.
So I think these are really cool in terms of getting up. Globe Explorer is a very, I would say, kind of fun. It's like a visual search engine. It's a different way of kind of exploring a topic that I think is really neat. So I just think these tools, it's such a, I mean, I'm so much more productive, and I'm curious about you, just getting up to speed on a new topic, a new industry, a new area I want to go with. Before, you had to sit at your desk, do a lot of research, maybe look at Reddit, look at, interview people. And now you have so much information that's synthesized for you in, minutes, that you just can consume so much more information so fast.
Exactly.
And then two other big areas. I mean, the schedule user interviews, I think, has a lot of similarities to the schedule workshop sessions, but the user research piece. Now, I would say for this, I'm focused a little bit more on the synthesizing the research, right? So it's around how do you make sure, based on the research that's out there, like you're able to kind of pull through what are the best ideas. So Google Notebook LM, which was a free tool by Google, you can load in all of your notes and transcriptions and whatnot. And then you can ask it questions, and it will source the material, which documents it were sourced from. So you can pull those quotes out. It will suggest follow-up questions to you, which I think is really cool. So it's a good way of like kind of, again, parsing through that research. Dovetail is another tool that's very purpose built. It was actually it was around like research repositories before, but now they've added a lot of AI capabilities, notably similar, a little bit smaller. So these tools are really great at, like, again, helping you get a lot of interviews in, start to see where the overlaps are, starting to give, Andrew talked about in the last slide, the prompting as a challenge. Well, these tools help you not have to worry about making the perfect prompt, because they've done some of that heavy lifting behind the scenes. So you have to do a little bit less work. So I think these are really cool tools around the user research side. I think the important thing is, like on that first mind map slide, is you have to be careful about like not outsourcing everything to AI. You still want to do some work as a researcher, because the models today are very much around kind of pattern matching and finding the obvious. And so when you think about a lot of great research, what happens is the interesting elements are in the kind of corners, lurking around the edges. You're not always going to find that with the models. Now you can try to prompt it out of it, but it's not always perfect. So I would be a little cautious about, like, as I said at the beginning, like going everything. But there are tools to, again, help that process. A couple other tools that I think are interesting here, really around the idea of presentations and kind of quick websites. There's Gamma and Tome. You have things around kind of that transcription. Otter's great. Another one, but I've been using on like all my meetings, all of my user interviews, is Granola, which is a really cool tool for like when you have a meeting come up, it will automatically suggest you want to join. You can take notes. It's kind of a note-taking window, but then it'll also synthesize the notes to you and also do a transcription. So you have this ability to chat with the transcript. It's just really well thoughtfully designed and easy to use. And I'm seeing lots of people kind of pick up on that. So I think we're in a very exciting period with this section of the process in particular, because I think market research is one of those areas which is just like a lot of grunt work, a lot of getting in there, reading lots of stuff and coming up with insights, coming up with ideas as a product person. And as product people, what we want to be doing is that last part. We want to be coming up with the ideas. We want to be coming up with the experiments, measuring the experiments, but like, heavy, like Googling for hours, like what are all the possibilities for this, going through website after website to find ideas. That, to me at least, is not the most exciting piece of the work.
Right. Tell me a little bit about that pricing tool.
Yeah, so Peak AI, another good one. This is hyper focused on pricing, and I think that's often a problem. Like when especially for new startups or new organizations, how do I price this app or this SaaS tool? And this will actually help you do that dynamically. It will give you, both suggestions for pricing, off out the gate, but then also monitoring, competitors and thinking about how might you change pricing over time. How can you optimize, the cost of something? So really interesting tool. And another good one around just like summing up tons and tons of data and making ideas around that.
Okay. I'm also curious about the synthetic user interviews.
Yeah, so this is an interesting and hot topic, I would say. So the idea of a synthetic user is an AI user. It's someone that's not a real user, but it's going to go through and use your platform or give you feedback on your idea. So I would say for this, it's not really ready for prime time, and I don't even know if they have the full functionality like navigate applications and do a usability test. And that's where you might use an outset or something. But what it can do is give you some feedback early on when you're doing more kind of evaluative research or discovery research or kind of problem, space research, because you can get, the world, you can put in kind of, here's the persona that I'm thinking about. And it will then generate lots of synthetic users, like 100 or however many you select synthetic, so made up AI users that match kind of the high level persona, and then give you feedback based on your user interview script. So again, these aren't real people, but when you're in the early days, like when we were doing a lot of innovation work back in the day, it was very hard to, you know, it's expensive to do interviews. You have expensive product people doing interviews for a week. You can only do so many of them. If you're in the early days of exploring a space and you just want to have you just want to have a little bit of, you're throwing ideas on the wall, seeing what sticks, getting anything you can do to get you a little more accurate in the market, is valuable. And so I think this is a really interesting tool. I'm seeing a lot of innovation agencies are using this in the very early stages of their funnel as they try to figure out what are the best ideas that we should go with.
Excellent. Thank you. All right, let's talk about requirements discovery. And here, your topic is chat PRD.
Yes, I think this is this is a really cool story. The founder, this is a side hustle for her, which I like, and she's a CPO at a late stage startup. But I think one of the pain points is that a lot of us face is that when we're building product, we have to build these product documentation. We have to spend all this time mapping out clearly what is our feature trying to solve, getting into those things, and to make that very clear, there's a lot of legwork. And in the enterprise in particular, there's handoffs that have to happen. There's it's more of like a check the box sort of thing. But no one really loves like writing out these detailed documents, formatting them perfectly, and having all the things. And plus, the reality is a lot of it is boilerplate, right? Your functional requirements are always kind of the same in the general sense. So, even ChatGPT does a pretty good job of this, but ChatPRD will have some specific templates and kind of, again, going back that early, anything that we can do to help prompting be easier. So I think ChatPRD has some of those prompts built in, so you don't have to worry about all of the heavy lifting on that, and it will give you kind of a great requirements document. What's also really cool about ChatPRD is and ChatGPT has a Canvas function too, but there's this kind of mix of you have a document that then is outputted in kind of your editor, like a Google Docs editor, that you're then comparing to. You can chat with, or you can edit live. So I'll call out a couple other big areas. I think designing wireframes, which goes through in the prototyping process, there's a lot of and that was in that early red slide to the yellow, and I think the second one. But this idea of VO by Versal, this is where you can chat, again, using kind of a chat and say, hey, build me an interface for a dashboard, for example, and then can you change this to be a more this number to be a $sign with this amount, and it will update your dashboard on the fly and also give you the React code for that. UI Izzard, Galileo, Visily, or other tools that you can use to do that prototyping side of things. So some pretty, I would say, interesting possibilities here. A lot of tooling coming on the market, in particular in this space, that just helps. Again, going back, I think it's like a product person maybe doesn't do as much design, but they have that spec. They do that. They build out that PRD. Well, you can put that PRD into these systems. maybe it will visualize it. Maybe it's not perfect, but maybe it gets you something that's 80%, 70% of the way there, and brings that to life a little bit more, which is really cool. Um, Code to spec is I would say, very early area, but I think is one of a very interesting area, because there's a lot of pain, especially in legacy systems, of these very outdated monolith code bases, and no one knows how to update them or use them, but they need to update them. And so the ability to pump all that code into something and get out a spec, get out that PRD, I think has a really profound potential impact on the enterprise space. Still a little bit early days, though.
That is really cool. I actually hadn't heard of that one. That's pretty exciting.
Yeah,
I'm
that's
gonna
going to
try
be, I think,
that.
a real game changer.
Yeah.
Another really cool thing, I think, especially as product people, right? We're often tasked with, we got analytics, or we got metrics, or we got sales information, and now we need to visualize this. And I'm by no means an Excel wizard. I always wish I was, but now the beauty is I don't have to be, because I can put in my prompt, how might I do this, and you could get the Excel macro, or whatever formula. But even better, you can start to visualize these things. ChatGPT has a built-in what's called code interpreter, so it can run code, and it can actually bring these things to life. And these GraphMaker pecans, same thing. You can put in the data, and then you can or upload an Excel file or CSV file, and then you can ask it questions, and it will analyze it. It might give you the insight back from those questions, but it might also, you can also ask it to visualize a chart or for you. So I think this is really huge, because this is a time suck, and also just an area where, as product people, I want the insight, or I want to be able to visualize something, but I don't always have that visualization. And so the ability to kind of go, just give it a word of, here's the question I'm trying to answer, here's what I'm trying to learn from this document, and have that thing come up, is a real game changer.
Mhm.
And then a couple others, we have the mind mapping. We had a cool mind map at the beginning of these slides. So MindMeister helps visualize that. Um, the technical diagram one is another really cool one, Eraser AI. And again, I think that helps visualize technical diagrams. But even you can start to think about, okay, I've got the PRD document that I put together using Chat PRD or Fibry or ChatGPT, and then I can pull out the database schema or the architecture that it generated, and I can put it into this. And now, as a product person, I've got a system architecture. Now I'm going to want to review that with an actual architect, but I've gotten something that maybe got us 50 or 60% of the way there, where I previously would have had no ability to get even 10% of the way there, probably.
One thing I want to circle back around to with the Chat PRD is the founder Clairvaux that you mentioned. She's had some videos or talks where she says product management is dead,
Yeah,
and
she's controversial on that.
yeah, and I think from one perspective, she points out there's a lot of things where AI can help automate, um, but I've actually been telling people, and I tell this to every young person that's like entering college, when they ask me, what should I shoot to be? And I'm like, you know, it's hard to say what your best job opportunities are, because some of them might not even exist. You might want to start looking to see what new careers have emerged during your junior year, and I said, but out of the existing careers today, I think that product management is going to be a really big bright spot. And because when I see AI, it's amazing in accelerating our work, but it requires so much human validation and humans to be able to give real world context. And I think that uh, because of that, I don't see AI displacing product managers for a long, long, long time. I think that on the product team, it's probably one of the least likely to be really highly disrupted. I think it definitely is going to change where we put our effort, and hopefully, all these tips that you're giving people will help them to greatly displace some of the grunt work that they're doing. But what's your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think it's like the old phrase with all these things, right? Product management is dead. Long live product management. I think it's exactly that. It's probably changes dramatically from
Yeah.
what it is today, but I think it actually enables great product people to be way more effective. And I know we've got some ideas to share on that a bit later, but I think that it's gonna, yeah, I think you've nailed it. Is that it's the great product managers, the ones that are really leading teams, are looking at how they impact business metrics. They're coordinating, like you said, around all the different stakeholder groups and everything. And that's just something that is only improved with these tooling. Now, does it change the role dramatically? Yes, most maybe more than any of the other roles, but I think it all changes it for the better, because who wants to be plugging away, building out PRD documents? I certainly don't. I want to be happy, running workshops, having, coming up with new ideas, thinking about the business metrics, and then thinking about how do I impact them? How do I run more experiments faster? And I think that's what these tools enable.
Yeah, I've interviewed 44 product managers over the last year or so.
Wow.
And what I find is that um, they almost all feel guilty for not doing enough of the deep work, the vision, the strategy,
Yeah.
even road mapping.
Yeah.
It's just like they're spending so much time on just the grunt work and keeping the teams aligned and recommunicating and checking in and then having all these meetings with everybody,
Yep.
and yeah, I think that AI is one of the best things that has ever happened to PMs.
Agreed. Agreed.
Yeah, this is a slide that I made initially for my own staff when I was trying
Mhm.
to envision them on using AI all day, every day. And I said, hey, you can use AI to amplify yourself horizontally, being more productive, but you can also amplify yourself vertically and produce work that's at a higher level than your actual expertise, as long as you're competent enough to validate the results
Yeah.
and iterate with the AI. If you're not good enough to be able to do that, then you're going to be in big risk of some copy paste errors.
Yeah, nailed it. I think that's the key piece, right? Is like just be know where you are, right? Know where you are on the scale, and be open to asking questions to the experts of it and validating it to you, like you said.
Yeah, cool. All right, let's go on to your recommendations for prototyping. And of course, top pick is Figma AI. That would be my top pick also.
Yeah, that one's cool. And I would say though, this one is probably the one that's changing the most rapidly. So even I'll have a few additions that I'll share with people, but I think the designing prototyping, obviously we design prototypes. We've got Figma AI that would be within that subset, and a lot of cool tools I think also within Figma AI just to make more realistic data. I think that's one big challenge with prototypes is that designers, we kind of grew up trained as using lorem ipsum and whatnot, but that's not how that people get held up. They can't visualize those things. So
Mhm.
the ability to just have more realistic data in these things is a small thing, but it makes it's such a big impact, I think, for just people understanding things.
Yeah.
Other tools within that are Skipper, Create.ai, and Visily, which again are all more on the static side. One really cool thing that I would share within the design prototypes, but I haven't updated the playbook on it yet, is now the coded prototypes and the ability to go more towards code with these things. The three are Lovable, Bolt, and then Replit Agent. And these are all really cool in that you can literally go back to the prompting, put in your prompt, and it's going to go and create a fully working application. Now, is it going to be production ready? Maybe, maybe not, but you're going to be able to get something that you can play around with. You can see, you can again use that chat interface to edit and kind of update on the fly. Lovable has recently dropped in the past couple of weeks this ability to actually edit the styles or edit the content like yourself, kind of like a WYSIWYG editor. So these are really cool. This is a really big game changer because I think as product people, as designers, if we want to get user feedback, what better way to get user feedback than on something that's working, that feels real, even
Yeah.
if it's not fully connected.
Yes.
And that's really hard. That's very expensive to do. If you had to bring on an engineer to your team or you had to even code it yourself, like even if you had the skills, like that can be a very time consuming process. So that ability to go from idea to like a POC or even a working piece of software very fast is really incredible. If I was a product person, the two big areas that I would play around with today, any of the more general models, pick one, ChatGPT, Gemini, Claude, and then also play around with these prototyping tools.
Yeah.
Generate a PRD or generate an idea in one of those big document in one of those general tools, and then plug it into a bolt, into a lovable, into a replit agent, and see what you get and play around with it. Because I think that's the potential for the biggest unlock for product people overall with all of this. Because that was something that I mean, unless you were a designer, you really couldn't do, or maybe you would slice something together in Keynote or something if you were crafty. But that's a big gap, I think, to fill, and that ability to do all of that in a couple of days or even a day or a weekend is an absolute game changer.
Yes. I am super excited about Bolt, and actually, that's something that I've directed my own people to use. And so, yeah, number one for me is Figma AI, and number two is Bolt. But I don't consider them to be separate from each other, because I think a really cool way of using it is to come up with your high res mock up, or just even a screen or two, right? And then you feed that into Bolt. And say,
Yeah,
all right, here's a starting point. And then another thing that I tell my people to do is like, okay, here's the you got the PRD. All right, looks good enough. Start feeding that in pieces to Bolt. And I think that Bolt, it kind of comes across as like a tool for creating like full apps and stuff like that. And I think that's it kind of falls short there. If you want to do something good and sophisticated, you're going to find like, no, you're going to need your software engineer to
yeah,
tweak that thing and to really make it real. But I don't really view it as something for the software engineers as much as I view it for this, for prototyping,
yeah,
and where a product manager can do this all by themselves without even
exactly.
having to bother a designer, right? And then you can start exploring vision and testing the vision with prospective customers, or even sharing it internally to get feedback and buy-in. But yeah, I think it's a game changer. It's so exciting.
Yeah, no, I love that approach of kind of combining it with Figma as well.
Yeah. All right, let's go to your recommendations on development here.
Yeah, so I think the number one piece here would be Cursor. Now, there's again a few tools here which you could kind of, as Andrew just said, you could kind of lump in the lovables and the bolts into this. Also, a new tool with I would say is Windsurf is another popular one that's kind of back and forth. Cursor and Windsurf, as well as GitHub Copilot, fall into the camp of more of your traditional IDs. This means like a coding editor, like a developer would use. But what you can, again, what's cool about this is they have chat interfaces where you can put it in a concept, and then it will generate the code for you, and it will use the models, the latest language models, to put in the code. And again, I would say, even if you're not I've seen a lot of product people, even if you're and designers, even if you're not an engineer, even though it looks a little bit scary, but the cool thing is these things can now run a lot of the commands for you, so you can do everything through the chat interface. And that is really really cool, I would say, in terms of just mapping that whole flow out and actually building a more complicated piece of software. The recommendation I would have in terms of how you use these things is, again, really build out detailed documentation around your application concept. And then, just like you would, as a good product person, you'll take that big complex thing and think about, how do you break that up into smaller pieces. And again, you can ask the models to break it up into smaller pieces, and then you take those things one by one and input those prompts. They are getting better. You could, you could build a lot, but don't expect you to dump your entire PRD in and say, hey, build this thing and it's going to work. Probably not. But if you go step by step, just like an engineer would, just like a designer would, you're going to have some better results there. So again, tied to that prototyping piece, I think this is where you can get really really cool results as a product person that maybe you weren't even capable of before.
Yeah, I think that AI has hit software engineering profession faster and harder than any other profession on the face of the earth.
Yeah.
And the speed at which things are improving is amazing. Um, and for those of you who maybe haven't played around with the different AI tools for code generation, Claude is particularly good, even better than ChatGPT for producing code. The team there has obviously done some work to make it work well for writing code.
Yeah, and they just launched a new tool just for code editing. Although it's going to be it's more developer centric. But the other cool thing to your point there is that you just on Claude.ai or whatever the updated URL is can put in your idea and it will actually run the code in your browser so you can see your working piece of software in the browser. So if you have a little idea for a mini game or a form, for example, you can do it. You can see it in the browser, and then again, you can go and edit. You can say, "Hey, remove this field or add this text," and it will update right in the browser for you. And then you will have that code available, and you can export that code and say, "Hey, give this to my engineer," and say, "Hey, this is what I was imagining. Can you deploy this or bring this to life?"
Yes. And Emerson, one of the things that I've really pushed on in my organization through the years is you can't manage what you don't understand. Anybody with the title manager, right, including product manager, um, they really need to have some level of understanding of the work that the people on their team are doing. And so I've really pushed people through the years to get enough knowledge of computer science
Yeah,
so that they can actually manage. And that has made a huge difference in the quality of our quote unquote manager people.
I love that.
And but now the ability to do that is like so much easier. With
100.
Gen AI, it's like the level of effort is like 1/10. And so it's like there's no excuse. If you're a product manager, learn about something about computer science by playing around with these tools. Um, and one of the things that Marty Kagan has documented in his books is like, and even in his talks, he said one of his top pieces of advice to product managers is take an introduction to computer science course. Well,
Mhm.
guess what? Now you don't have to do that. Now you can do this. It's a lot more fun. It's a lot easier.
Yeah, and ask questions. I think that's a cool thing is that with these tools like Cursor, it will explain what it did as it goes. So you can
Yeah,
read those things. And if
exactly.
you don't, and you can even ask it like, "Hey, can you explain this to me?" You can select a piece of code or you can
Mhm.
select a document and say, what is this? What does this mean? So, I think, to your point, a good manager is someone who asks a lot of questions, is curious.
Yeah,
So if you're a good manager, you're going to be able to pick up all this just as more easily because you can ask the LLM the question, and now you're going to get the response back that's very targeted to it.
exactly. Another thing that you can do as a product manager, because this is the kinds of things that I advise my people to do, is to make sure you have access to your code repository and make sure you know how to easily get in there or tell a certain engineer or tech lead, hey, can you send me the pull request for the files? And then you go to AI, I'm like, what does this do? What is that? What's the purpose of this? You can learn so much because you already have the context of what that code is supposed to be because you drove that.
Yeah,
And it'll really help connect you with your engineering team.
yeah, I love that.
Cool. All right. This is something where, in those last two slides where you talk about prototyping and we talk about development, um, one of the things that I think that Gen AI has done, it's greatly lowered the barrier of entry to become a cross-functional performer. And you and I had talked earlier about that we both view that this is the future. I actually had a conversation with one of my staff last week, and we were talking about this. And I said, "What's your job description? What would you say your job description is?" And he couldn't answer. And I said, "My point is that you do some of this, you do some of that, you do some of this, you do some of that. So what's that called?" And I'm like, "And I'm the same. I do this variety of things, and your peers are doing this too." I think job descriptions have now become one of the biggest mental barriers to our human
Yes.
progress. of evolving
I
ourselves.
love that.
And so, if you're a product manager, you're a designer, take a look at the spectrum of these other things. You want to learn product marketing or sales, or maybe you want to do some design or software engineering or testing. Well, go for it. What's your
I couldn't
thoughts?
agree more. Could not agree more. I think it's the great equalizer. And like we were saying before with the prototyping, right? It just enables so much possibilities. So just play around with it and you'll see it yourself, I think.
Yeah. All right, let's talk about testing. Your top pick there is Test Sigma.
Again, one of the cool things about these tools, and even for engineers thinking about just in the product, in Cursor or Copilot themselves, is writing those tests more directly. I think there are some tools like Test Sigma, which are pretty cool around the testing flow, et cetera. I think there are going to be some really new unlocks. They haven't come on yet, but like when we think about these browser, so there's some cool tools that if you're not aware that like OpenAI, Anthropic have launched where the AI can control your browser. Kind of like, there's some RPA systems that do this, but it's all just based on a text input. And so now we're going to be able to do some QA testing, even where you could probably put in your test case that is maybe generated based on your automatically generated for you, and that's going to be able to be put into these things, and they're going to have a tester be able to go through like a manual QA tester and see if they could complete the task, see if it
Mm,
works or it doesn't work. So I think this is going to be a really big unlock for testing, and I think there's a lot of kind of manual work that happens in these things that should get better, and ultimately that impact will hopefully be less buggy code and more reliable software for all of us users.
that's awesome. I hadn't heard of that. I'm going to check that out. Okay. Um, Go to market. I think there's going to be a lot of interest here from PMs.
Yeah, so I mean, this is a really cool area, right? When you think of sales and marketing, a lot of the work that goes into that whole process, which ultimately will determine if our products are successful or not, is a lot of grunt work, a lot of manual work that happens. And with developers, I think this is another area that's probably changing the most, is moving the fastest, because what the models are really good at, the models are probably best at coming up with general things and summarizing information and coming up with things that are probably accurate. They're not perfect at things that are building things that are always 100% of the time accurate. So that makes it challenging for certain areas. But hey, for sales and marketing, doesn't need to be accurate 100%. It's about like getting the gist of something is perfect. And also the other thing with sales and marketing, also why developing developers, it's a good use case, is because it has a very clear test at the end that there's a known answer of if it's successful. So developers, does this feature work? And there's patterns around that. With go to market, do people respond to the email? Do people click on the advertising? Do people go to the website? Do people go to the app? Do they convert in these different stages? So this is something where an AI can come up with an experiment and then see its cycle of did it actually improve itself. So lots and lots of possibilities here. Just to call out a few, I think generating copy, generating ad creative, Canva obviously is always been huge, but more on the copy side, Jasper, Creatopy is our create copy, I think are really good tools. Just to, again, let a non-expert quickly generate things and lots of ideas. Customer service is another huge area where I think we've all felt the horrible chat bots, which you have to go very manually and like down a path. Now that can be much more human-like because of these conversational experiences, and there's a lot of tooling going into this in particular. Another big area for product people is just and salespeople is just like the enrichment, the grunt work of very common tasks, right? Of like, oh, I've got this spreadsheet of this thing, and I want to get more information. Even when you think about product-led growth, it's like, oh, is this person the right target? And then I want to think about how do I segment that and send things out. So Zapier has been a long player in this space, but they've put a lot of AI tooling into this functionality, and Bardeen, Magical do these things. And then a lot of work on the personalized outreach and being able to like send one-on-one outreach that is based on their profile, scraping that information and everything. So this space is changing. I think these are some different ideas on this. You'll be able to click around, but yeah, there's a lot of possibility here.
That's awesome. I just have to ask you, Emerson, how in the world have you had the opportunity to play with all these things? And do you have help from others? And are you crowdsourcing within InfoBeans? Or did you do all this yourself um, and come up with these conclusions?
Yeah, it's a great question, and it's a big part of my job is just try to stay on top of all these things, and again,
Mm,
using these tools, they now help you, I think, automate a lot of thinking about this. We have different people on our team that are also playing around with stuff and then suggesting it. I think Twitter and whatnot is a good space to just stay on top of what people are doing and then test things out. And then the other thing is I think a lot of some of these tools are companies that have been around for a while but are now they've got the idea that, hey, AI was really a key driver. So when you look at Zapier, Pendo, Twilio, and Customer by which was I think Customer.io originally, they acquired it. Braze. These were things that we were using on a lot of our products over the years. But now they've Intercom, same thing. But they got 2 years ago. They're like, hey, we're going full steam ahead on the AI stuff, just like you were saying with your team. And now they're, I think, out ahead of the field. So I think that's kind of a mix of seeing things from the years past that are jumping on that and really actually executing at a high level, and then also spending a lot of time in it. And to your point, I'm sure I've missed. I'm sure I haven't played around with all of them, and I hear from a lot of our clients like, hey, which one should I use for this? And it's a never ending cycle. You're
yeah.
always on the hamster wheel.
Yeah. Oh, there was a question that was raised by someone outside of this context where they said, hey, because AI is obviously advancing so quickly, maybe I should just wait into the future when it all settles and then use it when it's mature. And really, what I tell everybody is like, no, you have to use it now, all day, every day, because it's about learning where the boundaries are, where what it's good at, what it's not good at, and how to get so much juice out of this, squeezing the orange. And if you're learning how to do this now, when those next advancements come, you're going to be right on top of it. You will know exactly how to leverage those new capabilities. And Emerson, what's really interesting is that that company that we're really excited about, Bolt, they almost went out of business.
Yeah, yeah.
But then there was an advancement in the open source LLMs. And then they were like, oh, well, we know exactly how to take advantage of that. And
Right.
boom, now they have a product that just like really took off.
It's
They're
like
like,
I think
it's
one of the
just,
fastest growing European startups in history as a
yeah.
result.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. So this is like AI is like the biggest advancement in all human history by far. And so
Yeah.
it's like, you got to be on top of it.
No, I think I love what you said there is like because I often I think we all if we're playing around with it because it always gets better every week, every month it gets better. So you're always like, oh well, I should have just waited. But exactly what you said, right? It's like you have to be playing around with it now because the models today. I think Ethan Mollick had a great quote, or in his book about co-intelligence, which is a great book. I think just to get if you're early in the stuff to understand how you might use it and experiment with it. He's a professor at Cornell, and it or Penn, but anyways, but his whole thing was the models today are the dumbest they'll ever be, and that's always true. The models are always going to get smarter and better. So so you better like just think about how you are always thinking about getting on top of that stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, this is the advice that I've been giving to my clients and my staff before that. But what's your thoughts on here? What jumps out to you?
No, I think this is exactly it, and I think we've talked about it in a couple of other areas, but it just allows you to do more with less. I think you've summed it up perfectly here. This is going to, a product person before was maybe segmented, and they're always cross-functional, right? You're always a good product person is always cross-functional, but now they can do so much more. I mean, when before were you able to build out a coded prototype of your idea in a day? When were you able to test that and synthesize dozens of research interviews in a week or a couple of days? This just allows us to do so much more, which I think ultimately means we're going to be delivering better products out there We're going to be able to run more experiments and see what ultimately works. And we're going to be able to do so much more as product people that, and I think, to your point earlier, like this is an exciting time for product people because it gives us so many more tools in the toolkit, which is just going to enable us to be entrepreneurs or even just do a lot more within companies.
Outstanding. Emerson, thank you so much for coming to this and for sharing so much of your hard-earned knowledge.
I think ultimately this is for all of us, right? We're all learning as we go, and it's all about giving back to the community and thinking about how do we all get better and smarter together.
Absolutely, absolutely. Couldn't agree more.